Dan, welcome back. How we
Hey,
doing?
Frank. Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It is
Good.
Thanksgiving whenever this episode is going to be released. So if you could look forward in time and tell me what your Thanksgiving is like, I'd really appreciate it.
It's going to be turkey, ham, a nice fire, the family together by our house, and watching football.
That is all about freedom, isn't it? Just being
That's
able to
right.
sit around the fire, enjoy a nice Thanksgiving meal with the family. That is exactly what our country is about. Really,
That's right.
really thankful
Yeah.
for it. And we have a bunch of our law enforcement and first responders out there, EMS, fire, law enforcement, a lot of our frontline workers out there, nurses, all of you who are going to be working on Thanksgiving Day, from me and Dan, a big, fat, happy thank you. Thank you so much for what you
Yes.
do. Yes, and thank you
And
for your
Frank, you
service.
probably experienced a lot of holidays where you were working.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Night shift, day shift, all all around it, especially around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
The Thanksgiving shift was normally really quiet, and I know I
Hmm.
shouldn't say that if you are on duty in law enforcement. You may want to hit the mute button if you're on duty and you're listening to this podcast when I say that word. But it would be the Q word when early on in the shift. But it seems like once everyone started to get a little bit buzzed up and woke up, that's when the Thanksgiving fun would happen on the
How about
shift.
those exploding turkeys and what do they call it? Where they boil them in oil or something?
Oh yeah, that's right. Those pressure cookers out there and all these little
Yeah.
TikTok
Yeah.
videos. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
watching some of
Yeah.
those. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so for the listeners who are just joining us, you can pick up our podcasts on Spotify and Apple or wherever your favorite podcast host is being listened to. You can also watch us on YouTube, and I think that you can watch us on Spotify now as well. I believe that Spotify host is supporting video, but there is a link in the show notes. It's a link tree. Just click that and share it with your friends, anyone who could be interested in this podcast. And what I wanted to do was I actually reached out to Dan today because I had an interesting question in one of my seminars today. And I would like to share that question with Dan, maybe get some feedback from you, Dan, and
Sure.
kind of provide some thoughts of my own. Okay. So a student asked me, he raised his hand and he says, look, you know what? We're learning all this good Reid stuff in this 4 day seminar, which for those of you who may be unfamiliar, if you check our website, we have a list of all of our classes that you can take, our seminars, and some of our products and offering. One of those classes is the interviewing and advanced interrogation class. It lasts for 4 days. So today is day 3. And as we were getting into theme development, he said, look, I'm able to have great conversations with my colleagues in the seminar. I'm able to have great conversations with you, Frank, on the break about how to improve and some tips for interviewing and interrogation. But what's going to happen to me whenever I walk out of the seminar, whenever I go back to my department, and really I might be a lone ranger. I might be the only person who's using interviews and interrogations in a structured manner, let alone the Reid technique itself. And so, what he was asking me about, Dan, he says, "Look, if I haven't gone to college for this, or if I haven't gotten a lot of experience already under my belt, what can I do to keep the skills that I am learning in this class alive? And what can I do to sharpen my skills in interviewing and interrogation for the future?" And
Oh,
I just,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I was blown away by this question. And I've been on a roll with the people, our colleagues who are taking our classes, by some of these wonderful questions. They absolutely add so much depth to our seminars.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And over the yes, 100%. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to provide to you two entry points to the Reid technique. First of all, I wanted to provide my entry point. I first attended a Reid seminar back in 2014 with the great Mark Reid was my instructor for this in North Charleston, South Carolina. So for those of you who are listening, former students and current students, I attended the exact same class that you attended as well. And before I talk about my experience with it and how I was able to sharpen my skills with our technique, I wanted to talk about the second entry point, and that is with our host Dan Malloy. So, Dan, can you tell us how did you get involved in the Reid technique? How did you get the job, and what was your entry point? Before I go into my side of the story.
Well, yeah, it was really by luck, Frank, and as a lot of people's
Yeah.
careers are. I didn't go out seeking this. I graduated from college and I wanted to get in law enforcement, but there wasn't a lot of hiring being done. And someone suggested, why don't you go over to John Reid? They're a company that does polygraph tests. They also have a polygraph school to train an individual to become an examiner. And I didn't know much. I didn't know anything about polygraph, just what you heard on the news. And when I went over there, they they had a 6 month program, and then you could stay on or submit for a master's program a little bit later on. But they would only take 5 people per class if you were accepted to the program. And I was accepted, and when I finished, my intent was again start looking for a job. And John Reid at the time came to me and said, "Dan, do you want to stay with us?" And I says, "Yes." And that's how it all started. Really, with polygraph, we didn't really have anything as far as teaching, interviewing, and interrogation. We taught polygraph, which certainly did help doing our interviews and interrogations with the use of polygraph. And that's how actually the seminars kind of developed out of that. But my intent was not to be a speaker, but to just, again, start doing these polygraph tests and that. And then our seminars finally developed, and I was asked to join our program in that. And little by little, worked myself into conducting these programs, and I've been there 51 years now with Reid's. And one of the things that I remember, and I'll never forget it, 51 years ago, is that how I learned doing really interviews and interrogations was that the staff would video you doing an interview and an interrogation. And
Was
and
this
on
a real life case?
Oh yeah, it was
Like,
a
oh,
real life
really?
case.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
And
Wow.
then on Friday of that week, where they videoed you, everyone would come in early, which was a strike against you, and we'd be sitting at a big
Oh,
conference table, and John Reid would be there,
oh my
and
gosh.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
John Reed
and
himself.
yep, and
Oh, man.
he would say to
Yeah.
everybody, "Now we're here to evaluate Dan doing this interview, this
Oh,
interrogation," and
man.
I'm sure there's a lot of things that Dan did right in this interview and the interrogation. Everyone would snicker at that. And then, but we're not interested in the good stuff, where we want to talk more about the areas that he needs help in, or that could have been changed.
I'm
And
starting to sweat just thinking
then the
about that,
staff
Dan.
would rip
Wow.
your heart out. They would rip
Oh,
you
man.
apart. But
Oh,
it wasn't pleasant at the time, but you really did learn, and that is probably one of the things that helped me tremendously is
mm,
the insight of senior people looking at you, watching you, critiquing you, really on a daily basis almost. And you really learned what to do right and areas to stay away from. And it wasn't just do this, do that. It was an
mhm.
explanation behind everything, why you don't want to do this, why you should be
Yeah,
doing this.
yeah.
Many things like we teach in our program today. And that really helped. But unfortunately, a lot of investigators don't have that benefit of someone being able to look over their shoulder, guide them through every one of their interviews and interrogations until the investigator thinks, or until you're ready to do it solo on your own like that. And it is a lot of material that we cover in the program, and it is hard to remember everything that we talk about. And you don't really have to. It's a good idea. One of the things I find is a very good idea is if you're not doing interviews and interrogations on a daily basis, and being starting at Reid's and that, we do that every single day. Would be an interview, many
Hmm.
times an interrogation. So not many investigators have that luxury of being able to do that every day. But when you don't do it for a while, you kind of get rusty. You may forget something. And
Yeah,
one of the
yeah.
things that I find would be very helpful is the outline book. they attended the
One,
program,
yes, yes,
and
100%.
to review your notes before you go in for an interview, review them before you go in for an interrogation. Now, with the interview, the BAI, you do have the guide in the outline book of the BAI questions, and it's a very good idea to either copy those or write them out yourself. Make sure you always have that in front of you when you do interviews. You have a lot of other questions that you may want to ask people in the interview, the who, what, where, and why. But by having those BAI questions in front of you, you're going to be able to make sure you can cover all the pertinent areas that you need to. If you just try to memorize it, which you don't have to do, or you don't want to read off the questions, just phrase it in a way you feel comfortable. But by having it in front of you, you make sure that at the end of that interview, you covered all the relevant areas that you want to. If you don't have it in front of you, many times you might let a suspect go, and then you think, oh, I forgot to ask this one or that one. This would have been a good question. So take it slow. You don't have to, be perfect. Thing that I always found, and John Reid always stressed this too, is that that subject doesn't know what you're going to be asking them as far as what questions are right, what questions are wrong. I mean, so just be prepared when you go in for that interview. Have that in front of you, and that's a tremendous guide to have.
I agree with everything that you're saying, Dan. And what I notice is a reoccurring motif, and that's being prepared, and being prepared with it. And I have a couple of insights that I would like to share.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I wanted you to share your story with our listeners because I think it's really important to know that there were multiple entry points into the Reid technique itself, and you came from it, pretty much from the founder himself, John Reid, and being able to have this mentorship and guidance every step of the way, which is, I mean, what an outstanding way to sharpen the lance of your intellectual abilities in there. I
Yes,
mean,
not only
just
from
yeah,
John Reed, but from a lot
yeah.
of the
But
senior
everyone else.
people on staff. I mean, they were, I would have to say, the best interviewers, best interrogators I've ever met. And fortunately, some may not be around anymore, but by their knowledge and guidance is that really helped tremendously in developing your skills.
There's a heat. There was a heat from the discovery of John E. Reid, and this discovery of the Reid technique being passed on to the scions of interviewing and interrogation, and then learning from them. I often tell the students on day one now, I say, if you just look at this book, there is a magnetism here. There is something special here that was stumbled upon. And every page has information that senior investigators, like you were saying, those who are here and those that have passed on to their great reward, their presence is felt in there. It's a really amazing thing, and
Yes,
I always tell everyone at the beginning of the class on Friday, whenever you walk out of here, or day four, or day three, whatever
right.
variation that you happen to be having, is that whether you love it, whether you are indifferent to it, whether you become a Reid fanatic like myself, you will be different after this seminar. You will look at law enforcement or private investigations differently from this point on. And what I would
And
like,
Frank,
yeah, yeah.
everybody, one of the greatest things I think if you'll experience this, I certainly have, is that after you teach a class and you do get a person who just left there, and maybe a week later sending
Oh,
you an
yeah,
email
yeah,
saying, Dan or Frank, I applied these techniques in a child abuse case or a
exactly, yeah.
homicide, and the interview was almost just textbook, like you said. The interrogation was good. That person confessed to me, and I really thank you for this information. It's not always going to You're not always going to get people to admit guilt to you, but if you have these tools, you
Hmm.
certainly know if you didn't get that confession from the deceptive, you certainly tried just about everything you possibly could have. And that really is a good feeling to have.
It is a
And the
damn
feedback
good
of people
feeling.
too,
Yes. Hmm.
anybody that goes through our course, if you leave that course, you have a question about, something that we've talked about there, you're not sure about something, you want advice on how would you interview this person, or I interrogated this person, I didn't get him to confess, and I'd like to talk to you about maybe areas that I could have done differently. We're there. I mean,
Exactly.
every
Yes.
every
Yes.
speaker, every speaker, their emails are in the outline book. We're there to help afterwards,
A
and
hundred percent.
obviously,
Yes.
it's no charge at all, but that's part of our service to help you once you leave the course become better and become more efficient in using these techniques.
One of the amazing things about this company is that I've had several conversations with the majority of our Reid instructors, and every single one of them, Dan, the passion and the single-minded devotion to their craft is just, it's a humbling experience. There is no doubt in my mind whatsoever that if our leadership asked them to do something and go above and beyond, they wouldn't hesitate to do it. If any of former students or current students want to reach out to any of our instructors, they are an open book. They make themselves very, very accessible to you and your questions. And
Yeah,
what I would like to do is share a little bit on how I managed to become at least halfway proficient with the Reid technique. Now,
good.
I don't know if any of my interviews and interrogations would have survived the scrutiny of John Edward Reid or some of the scions of the company, or even some of the
Mm-hmm.
our senior instructors here. I would get chills. I would probably want to be in another room while they were reviewing my
Well,
videos. That would be kind of a brutal one, but
I don't know.
but
I
I
think
would
you'd
like.
do fine. I think you'd do fine, Frank.
This is how we don't do it. Look at
Yeah.
Frank. He looks like the biggest goofball. But no, oh, what I did is I applied a technique when I left on day 4 in North Charleston Police Department, South Carolina in 2014. Previous to taking the Reid class, I had taken the Hostage Crisis Negotiators class.
Ah,
And Scotty Fryer, my original instructor for this, and if you're from the Southeast, you know exactly who I'm talking about. He is famous or infamous, kind of depending on what side of the aisle you're on. Scotty told us, he says, look, when you walk out of here, if you're going to a department where you don't have multiple call outs, multiple call outs, multiple call outs, and if there's not a culture of crisis intervention, of hostage negotiating, he said, I want you to do this. I want you to practice our scripts that we have taught you on a daily basis. And he says, if it's coffee time, just practice your scripts. Driving to work, imagine someone is barricaded and you're talking them down. And he says, practice those active listening skills. Because he says, look, you may walk out of this class and you may not use our skills because you have low call volume, but then a year and a half later, there's a barricaded subject
yeah,
with hostages. And if you're the only person who had this class, guess who's going to be on primary before the state is able to come in a few hours later and take it over? It's going to be you. So what I did is I took a lot of that same practice with me to the technique when I walked out of the seminar. And here's what it looked like, Dan. I bought a copy of Lucinee's book, The Anatomy of Theme Development. That was the first thing that I did.
mm-hmm.
Now, if you're in law enforcement from the Southeast, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, if you want experience and if you want to make rank in special units, this is the place to be, is in South Carolina and in the Southeast. However, on the money side of things, it doesn't pay very, very, very well. I mean, that's just kind of the brutal reality of it.
Yeah,
But you will get tons of experience. And even with my limited money, though, I bought the Reid notebook that had a bunch of our questions in it, and I still have it today as well. And I bought a copy of Lou's book. And
anatomy of themes. Yes.
Anatomy of
Yeah.
Themes. And what I did with Anatomy of Themes is this. They started me off when I was at the Sheriff's Department working the sexual assault cases. So what I did is I committed to memory about 3 or 4 of Lou's sexual assault themes in there. And I would practice those themes when I'm driving to work, if I'm waiting around, to testify in court or sitting around all day long in a courtroom just waiting for prelims, I would imagine myself going into an interview, sitting down, introducing myself, doing the suitability for the interview questions, the baseline questions, and then getting into those investigative and BAI questions. And also, what I did was I started to do a dry run. I would actually go into our interrogation room, I would sit down. I had a chair, and I actually moved our DT dummy into the chair to be my suspect, and I would wheel him into the interview room just to get used to seeing another person's form in there. I would go in and I would talk to myself, right? I would go in there, I would introduce
Now, Frank,
myself. Yeah.
when you talk to yourself, did somebody talk back to you?
Well,
I'm
it's
just
really
asking,
funny that you say that because I could have sworn I heard a voice in the room with me, right?
really? How about that dummy? Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
dummy.
Well,
What?
maybe that'll
Talk
be
to me.
another.
Talk to me.
Well,
He's in
that'll be
frozen body
something
posture
else.
the entire time.
We'll get into that a little bit
Yeah,
later
yeah.
when we get the psychology of some of this.
Is
But
the voice in your room with you right now, Frank?
yeah, yeah. Do you hear it? But is that Frank? That I mean, it sounds corny, but I'll tell you what. When For you to do that after leaving the course is something that I'll tell you a lot of investigators probably wouldn't do. Thinking, well, this is I don't need to do this or that, but taking it to that level really, I think, made you become more comfortable in doing that, and with especially with the interrogation side of things. The interview, you got the kind of the script with those
Hmm.
questions, but the
Exactly. Yeah.
interrogation, there's nothing in front of you. You're not reading off a teleprompter. You don't have questions in front of you in the interrogation.
And you
You're
have to talk. It's a
and
monologue. You have to keep it
and
going. You can't ask for feedback. Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's the thing that a lot of investigators, I think, don't realize that in the interrogation, it's not a question and answer like you were doing in the interview. And from a lot of the videos that I've seen on the internet that they post these interrogations that investigators do, it's nothing like we say to do. It's all they're still asking questions and they're getting
Yes, yes.
feedback and
Hmm.
that, and then it's a little bit of interrogation, then more questions and that. Where we're saying one of the best things to do is you do all the talking in there, and you need to, as we say, develop themes. Now, themes, for those of you that may be listening that uh, don't know what that is a monologue by the investigator in which they offer reasons and excuses to serve to psychologically, not legally, justify or minimize what this person's has done. You never give them any legal justification, but you empathize with them and you explain these things of what they were feeling, what they were going
Hmm.
through when they did commit this particular crime. And in later episodes, we will talk about, especially theme development, which is the foundation of any interrogation. We're going to talk about what we call first person themes, and then a technique that is tremendous called third person themes. And those are stories you tell them about other people, other cases that either you've got involved with, that you've dealt with. They don't directly pertain to them, but what they do is they force the individual to kind of listen to you. And through these stories that you're telling them about yourself, maybe, or friends, the suspect starts to think, you know what, you really do understand maybe why I did what I did. You've been there with other people. You, you've been there yourself in certain situations, the emotions that maybe you had to go through in certain challenges in your life. The same thing they're going through. And when they start thinking that, it makes it much easier for them to confide in you what they did.
A
They
hundred
feel more
percent, Dan.
comfortable. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. We are providing them a face-saving way to admit to what they did. And everything that you are outlining, the fundamental ingredients that makes a magic recipe of theme development, there is a rhythm, there is a flow to it, there's a cadence to it that's going to be different to every single to all the interrogators. And my very first case that I was using the Reid technique on, I was really, really nervous, but It wasn't the first time I did a BAI because I had actually done a dry run 25 times prior to the subject coming in for an interview. And then when I did the interrogation on the subject, well, I did 4 or 5 practice runs doing an interrogation. Hey, what if one of my themes isn't working? How do I transition to a second theme? What if they say, but I didn't do it? And I practice the hand up, and turning away from
Stopping
them.
denials, right?
Exactly, that's right. Objections. You know what, Frank? There's no way I could have done it, and I have to bleep out what his objection was because it was so offensive.
Yeah.
But I was able to anticipate a lot of it because I had practiced it, because I did a dry run of it. But what
That is
Dan
so
was
important, yeah.
Oh, yes, yes. And but if you are an investigator by yourself, if you are a patrol officer, if you are a civilian and an investigator, an administrative person, whatever it is, there's nothing stopping you from looking like a glorious idiot for just a little bit and practicing. You know what? Let's make our mistakes in a dry run. Let's look like an idiot and have fun doing it. That
Frank,
was my
yeah.
philosophy to
Well,
it.
I
Let's
think
have
you're
fun
doing a
doing
good
it. Let's go
job.
in there and do
I
it.
think you
Yeah.
did a good job of that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
Well, no, I wasn't playing.
no. But Frank, one of the things that you mentioned is really important. I think and that is preparing what you're going to be saying to the person.
Yes,
And
yes.
when you have your theme, a theme is not just going in and saying to the person, I think the reason you did this was because emotions took the better of you and it caused you to act out of character, or your back was up against the wall. That's why you took the money or the property from that home. That is the idea of a theme. But a theme is going to you're going to have to force yourself to talk for at least 5 minutes on that one idea of what you're going to be
Mhm.
saying to this person. In our outline, we have a whole host of themes being listed in Lou's book, The Anatomy of
Mhm.
Interrogation Themes. There's thousands of different themes in there, but those are the ideas. Now, pick one of those themes out and then force yourself to go, whether it be in your own mind or even speaking it out yourself. How are you going to talk for 5 minutes on this one particular topic? And then, if that's not working, how do you move to the next
Mhm.
topic and spend another 5 minutes? And one of the things that I thought was, or one of the things that was actually a problem, and it's for every new interrogator, is going in there and spending time with the person. I mean,
Yes,
people would
yes,
tell
yes,
you,
that's
okay,
right.
Dan, I want you to go in there. I want you to tell this to the person, and these are the themes I want you to use. Okay, so I go in there, and 5 minutes later, I'm walking out of there saying, well, I told them those things, but they didn't confess. But the one thing I did not do, and this is what you have to do, is you have to develop those themes
That's right. Yes,
and
yes, you do.
and tell stories in there. Every I think every investigator that may attend our course, or even that doesn't has a whole host of themes that they can develop with people, and those are from your experience in dealing with past cases. You talk about how you learn from your experience. Well, one of the things is go back over cases that you've got involved with, or maybe you didn't, another investigator did that you're
Exactly.
familiar with,
Yes, yes. Hmm.
and then think about, okay, if I was to deal with this person, what kind of interview questions would I
That's a
ask them?
great tip.
And
Yes,
then
go
if
back
I,
to old cases.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
look
then
at that. Yeah.
what if I
Hmm.
interrogated this person? What could I say to them to get them to confess? And one of the things I remember as we talk about this, they had us do was actually write out a theme.
I
Now,
like that idea.
you know,
Yes,
and
yes. Hmm.
and by writing out the theme, okay, I want you to develop a theme about why this person committed this particular crime. I want you to write 5 themes out. And it wasn't by doing that, you just didn't write down, well, I think that you had too much to drink. That's what caused you to do it. Or I think your emotions got the better of you, or your back was up against the wall. Is that you write that idea down, and now you start word for word writing out what you would be saying to this person. Just like you were talking about, Frank, talking this out to that friend of yours,
That's
that
right. My
dummy, that
imaginary friend, the
friend.
dummy.
Yeah,
Although I
no,
don't know
but
who's the dummy.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
but Frank, that is so good. But that is what really
Yeah.
forced you to become familiar with these things, and then it all
Hmm.
becomes almost second nature.
Well, there's a movement to it. There is a physical process of the Reid technique from the moment you enter the room, from the moment you introduce yourself, whenever you sit down, whenever you take your notepad out and you're looking at your questions. There's going to be a movement to it. And something else about it is that we are used to in society having a conversation with someone on an equal basis, but
Yeah,
the dynamics are a little bit different in an interview. And then when you move into an interrogation, it can, at first, it feels like such an unnatural act because all you're doing is talking, all you're doing is suggesting. But once you get over those mental blocks, if you're a law enforcement officer, when you were in your field training phase, it probably felt really awkward to show up at a domestic violence call. Hey, where do I stand? What do I do? How do I take someone's statement? But once you got over that awkward part of it and you realized what was going on, then you were able to zero in on the important parts. And that's how the interviewing goes. But for me, what I would recommend to somebody is first of all to take Dan's suggestion, take really good notes in the class. If you need some clarifications, reach out to Dan, reach out to me, open up your booklet and reach out to one of the instructors if necessary. But take really good notes and look at those notes outside of the class. Buy Lou's book, buy Dave's book on child abuse and sexual abuse investigation. We have all kind of other books. I love books. Books are wonderful. I'm not going to get
and,
a notification drop down on my screen. No one's going to call me through a book. I love a hard copy book myself. They're really, really good.
and Frank, another suggestion
Hmm.
would be there are so many interrogations that are posted on the internet on
Yes, yeah.
these, and when you look, unfortunately, from the ones that I've seen that have been posted, not a lot of them are good. But I think if an investigator who's taken our class would go on that site now, any of those sites that post interrogations, and they kind of look at, okay, this is what this interrogator is doing in there. How would you do it differently based on what you just been taught in the Reid
Hmm.
technique? And kind of put yourself in that investigator's position. And I think many times you would see, well, they shouldn't be doing this or they shouldn't be doing that. And if I
Hmm.
was interrogating this person, this is maybe what I would be saying to this individual. And I think, putting yourself in that position and seeing it may be a way to help you in
Hmm.
becoming more comfortable with the skills.
There is one downside to it, Dan, to using that methodology.
What's that,
The
Frank?
the rage that you as a professional interviewer and interrogator will feel will take on a life of its own. I cannot watch
You are.
Netflix. I can't watch these crime shows the way they do these interrogations. I just want to throw something at the screen. And like my family,
Right.
extended family at Thanksgiving, they're always like, "Hey Frank, is that how you do, an
Yeah.
interrogation?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh, this is just
Frank, you're absolutely right. Is that I can't watch a lot of those shows because,
yeah,
they may get to the end result
it's
with the
so
subject,
sad." Well, this
but
is
they could have, if they
yeah, yeah.
just followed some of the guidelines that we have, or that they could have made the job so much easier for
Well, this is
themselves.
what I don't understand about some interrogators out there, okay? They will have one home run using a gimmick, using a trick, or
Right.
some methodology where they got a really good confession from someone, which
Right.
was substantiated, right? I mean, we don't want to just get a confession. We need it to be independently substantiated, to do anything. But
Exactly.
they'll use this one trick and then they take on a laissez-faire attitude to interrogations after that. And they cannot get a successful conclusion through a confession on 99 out of 100, interviews that they do, but they just focus on that one. and then they refuse to change at all because and they think
Right.
this one tactic and they're like, well, I came in there, with a hot cup of coffee and I gave it to them, and this cup of coffee managed to build rapport with them, and we just sat there and talked like we were best friends all day. And then I got a confession because I built rapport with them like that. And I'm like, great. Me or Dan, we could have swooped in there and had everything hemmed up in like 2 hours. And you
Before, yeah,
spent
before the
all
coffee
day
cooled off.
building
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
rapport with
yeah.
this person. Like, give me a break. I mean, it just but I can't stand those shows out there.
Oh,
They just or the stuff on YouTube and TikTok is so bad.
it is
Like
bad. It
it's
is
and
bad,
I
and
know you weren't taught that in the police academy because we had a little.
that's yeah.
You weren't taught to go in there and treat these people like that. It's just I don't know. I digress. I can say it because I used to be a cop. I used to be a
Right.
detective. I can say it, but
And in the future too, by the
yeah,
way, Frank and I are going to be examining some of those
that's right. Yes, we
interviews,
are.
interrogations that are on the internet, TikTok, and YouTube, and talking about evaluating how the investigator could have made their job easier, and
Yeah,
pointing
we're
out
not going
maybe
to
some.
beat a dead horse. We're not going to beat a dead horse. We're not going to
We don't
yeah,
have all the answers, but
we're not making fun of it. Yeah.
if you see what they're doing, then if you have another thought on, okay, if you tried this, this might have made a difference, or
Exactly.
this
Yes,
could have
yes,
you could
yes.
have done this,
100% on that.
and
Yeah.
perhaps got the person again to admit it in a
Hmm.
much more expedient manner than
100%.
and that.
Dan suggested number one is avail yourself of the resources that we have. The notebook, our books online, really, really great sources. Dan's second suggestion, write out your themes, write them out verbatim, commit those scripts to memory. We're going to have a little bit, we will have a future episode on how to deal with a difficult subject during interrogation. If they're making jokes, if they're hitting on you, if they're, if they're deploying this clownish behavior as a countermeasure, how to come up over it. Scripts are going to be your best friend, but
And,
develop your own scripts, develop your own themes in there.
and we're
And
also going to be
mhm,
in the future too, talking about themes in all specific types of cases. So if you
wonderful,
have
wonderful.
some areas that you want us to address first, and that,
That's right. Shoot us an
please do
email.
that.
There is a link
Give
in
us
the
some,
show notes.
yeah,
Yeah.
give us some facts
Give us
on
some
an
ammo on this.
investigate.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, here, how would you interrogate this individual? Just briefly give us some of the facts, and we'll give you our how we would do it. Maybe acting it out, Frank and I, and giving you that to refer back to in the future.
I'm going to be the bad guy though. So Dan is going to have
Oh,
his work cut out for him, so,
oh man. Okay, okay. All right, Frank. Yeah, yeah.
All right, but I would avail yourself of our products. I would write out your themes. I would have a plan, have all of your questions ready to go. And then the fourth and final tip is this: do a dry run. Okay, sit there, go through the entire BAI, practice giving them Miranda, smooth as fast, as they say in law enforcement. Get really smooth with the Miranda form, especially with that cursed release form at the very end, knowing and understanding our rights, as I've read them to you, blah, blah, blah. Get smooth with that, suitability for the questioning, baseline, investigative, behavioral provoking questions. And then I would actually practice standing up, thanking them for their time. I
Yeah.
have one more thing that I need to check on. Practice walking out, and then practice articulating what your interrogation strategy is going to be. Pretend that your sheriff or your chief or your associates are standing around you, and you have to explain to them what the Reid technique is, what step one positive confrontation is. Hey, here's what my theme is. Here's where where I'm going to go. The subject may bring up this objection based on something that he told me in the BAI. Go through all of those little motions right there, right? Explaining why you think the person actually committed the crime. And then, whenever it's showtime, it might be your very first real case in the real world, but it will have been the 20th time, the 30th time that you have gone through the motions.
Yeah.
Smooth is fast. That's the
That's
best
great,
way to
Frank.
become proficient with it.
Great
Yeah.
information. Yeah.
I wish I could have gone to the Reid College, though, Dan. I'm a little bit envious of you. Have a
Oh,
master's in deception or deception detection. I guess
yes.
that
Yeah.
would look really good hanging up on my wall behind me. So,
It would, Frank. I
yeah,
think you'd have done good. Yeah.
we can add it to the Reid Museum. Is what we can do when we start our museum, our
Yeah.
501k. Well, Dan, thank you for stopping by, sharing some of your savvy
Thank you,
out there.
Frank, again. And again, please, if any of you have questions, make sure you shoot them to Frank and I.
That's right. Reid on the record at gmail.com. Link in the show notes, my friends. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friend or your coworkers. We would love to hear any kind of questions. Thank you.
Thank you.